Hello everyone, and welcome back to the new YouTube channel, Prince Dakota's Adventures. I'm author E.H. Allen, and I'll be reading the second half of the first chapter in my book, Prince Dakota Angel and the Multiple Universe Guardians Induction. And now we continue with the next half of Chapter 1. Let's see here. Chapter Cracked Up and Detoxified Prince. New paragraph. There were a few situations where Prince Dakota had to work harder than others to convince parents to let their kids join the league. But he was surprised to find that Amish communities usually agreed without argument. The Amish didn't support violence and war, but they understood that Kotu had bigger plans for the universe and that the Mugs were a unique group. They were also intrigued to learn that Mugs could not be killed, and they were also not allowed to kill enemies, only capture, detain, and punish those intent on ruling the universe. The Amish, Mennonites, and other similar groups knew a special thing when they saw it, and Dakota radiated a special presence when he was around. Native American groups were the most supportive and would actively push any of their children identified as Mug candidates to join immediately. This happened in the case of several Native American Mugs from different universes that were selected during the Trail of Tears. Being Mugs would protect those people from the U.S. government of the 19th century, forcing them to relocate and walk hundreds of miles. Dakota offered them an advanced city with technology that would protect them from outside threats. It wasn't a flying city, but it did have high walls and an EM barrier to protect it. New paragraph. The Native Americans had to openly accept the 10-mile wide city, but he couldn't force them to take it. But he didn't have to. They accepted it without hesitation, since it gave them somewhere comfortable to live. They were fascinated and in awe whenever Prince Dakota placed one of the huge cities, which was miniaturized until he used matter-energy technology to grow it to normal size. It also had advanced transportation tech for getting around the city and the planet. The only stipulation was that they couldn't use any of the tech for war against another country on Earth, including the one they lived in, only for defense. After the advanced city was gifted to the Native Americans, the U.S. government usually started kissing up to the leaders of the new city, hoping for sharing of tech. The new city leaders and residents were usually annoyed by this, since without the advanced city, the U.S. military would be mistreating them, as they were forced to walk to the southwest from their homes in the Carolinas and other southern states. They wanted to cut off contact with the U.S., but Dakota warned them they'd be required to carefully consider all outside requests for the sharing of technology, which they were taught how to use by Dakota in advanced holographic education programs. Since Dakota was part Native American, they respected his rules, and they were happy with the fact anyone with their ancestry was chosen by powerful beings to lead a superpowered army. I'm going to take a quick short break, and then I'll continue with the first dialogue. Welcome back. New paragraph. Hey, Your Majesty, you okay? Wilhelm T. Riker asked as he stood next to his commanding officer. Since Prince Dakota was the Mug leader, his rank was Rear Junior Admiral, and he was the executive commander of the army. His position as the Mug boss was appointed to him, and as long as he followed the rules and treated his soldiers right, it couldn't be taken away from him, even if a soldier passed him in rank. He also trained hard to keep sharp and stay ahead of his soldiers. His superpowered abilities gave him an edge and allowed him to stay ahead as long as he made an effort. But that wasn't the case with his subordinates. If another Mug passed Riker in rank during training or was promoted, he would now be subordinate to a previously lower-ranking one. Even Dakota's second in command, Bryce Crenshaw, who was from the early 21st century in his universe, had to be careful that lower-ranking Mugs didn't pass him in rank. He trained hard to stay ahead. Riker was from the 24th century in his universe, which was happening at the same time as the late 20th century in Dakota's universe. Riker's era was advanced, and humans had developed faster-than-light technology to travel to other star systems. They lived in an era where travel to other planets was an everyday normal thing. An interstellar government, known as the United Federation of Planets, was created to bring together intelligent species from different star systems to protect each other, share technology, and live their lives. A military organization known as Starfleet used faster-than-light capable starships to protect the home planets and colonies of those species that were part of the UFP. New paragraph. Huh? What? Prince Dakota asked as he shook his head slightly as if to clear it. He glanced up at the handsome fourth-in-command soldier grinning slightly at him. Riker was Caucasian and your typical ridiculously handsome 16-year-old. He had enormous respect for Dakota and was over the moon at being chosen to be a mug. Since Riker lived in an advanced era, it was allowed to be known to the public that he was part of a superpowered organization with access to unlimited hyper-advanced technology to help them do their job of protecting the MER, or multiple universe realm. The Ultra-Ascended beings gave them access to all advanced tech that had been invented or would be invented in any universe. It was the reason a high-ranking Starfleet officer was appointed as a liaison between the Mugs and the UFP. Starfleet had an office in the Alaskan town where Riker called home. New paragraph. Prince Dakota and his soldiers had the unique ability to protect their entire universes from outside and domestic threats without breaking a sweat, so no species had the desire to agitate the Mugs. Even the Romulans, who were a distrustful and warring race, knew better than to piss off Dakota, although there were a few rogue people that tried with disastrous results on their end. A few situations were being handled at the moment concerning that issue. One was happening in Riker's universe with a Romulan ambassador that was about to be shown his evil ways were going to get him a spanking by the Mugs. But for now, another situation had come up which needed their attention. New paragraph. Sorry to startle you, but you were just staring blank-faced while you stood and looked out over the balcony. I wanted to make sure you weren't cracking up, Riker said, with the same debonair half-grin still on his face. He made no secret of the fact he was amused, his superhuman boss still spaced out from time to time. But he also respected Prince Dakota's commitment and focus while on missions assigned to them by the UA beings. When Dakota put his mind to something, whatever bad people opposed him would be quickly shown the error of their ways. He knew Dakota was a telepathic empath and would have sensed him walking up from 1,000 feet away. But when Dakota was distracted, he didn't always notice someone walking towards him. Unless someone had extremely negative emotions on their minds and wanted to try to harm Dakota, if he was distracted by something, you might be able to sneak up on him, such as what Riker had done. Riker was getting better at it and knew how to spot when Dakota was in another world spacing out. New paragraph. No, I'm not cracking up, Will, but I get lost in the beauty of this city most days. I'll never tire of it, Prince Dakota said as he took in the view. The royal palace was tall, but it wasn't the tallest building in the flying city for operational purposes. The city had to be well balanced to fly through space and the atmospheres of planets, which meant all the buildings had to be well placed. The tallest building, the control tower at 100 stories, was in the exact center of the city, and every building was shorter as they got further from the center to the outer rim of the superstructure. The palace was 80 stories and had lots of amenities, such as guest rooms for Dakota's constituents. He routinely invited citizens to visit, and anyone who wanted to stay could put their name on a list. Since he was a massive rail fan, there were 2 floors dedicated to model trains. Every guest enjoyed watching the trains, and it was their favorite place to see in the whole palace. His close friend, Daryl, was super brilliant and helped with designing and building the train room, along with several Epsilonian architects and engineers. The palace also had 2 swimming pools, one private and one public, a bowling alley, and other amenities dedicated to exercise. It also took up the equivalent of 4 rectangular city blocks. New paragraph. Yes, the Epsilonians don't mess around when it comes to architecture. I thought the Starfleet Corps of Engineers were king at building until I became a mug, Riker said as he leaned against the railing and took in the view of glass and metal structures in the city. He couldn't resist grinning when Prince Dakota grinned and turned his head to look at him. You remembered, Prince Dakota said. He was being cryptic as usual and would make people work to figure out what he was trying to tell them. But this wasn't Riker's first rodeo, and he wasn't fooled by the prince's cryptic games. He'd made sure to pay attention to what was going on around him, just in case Dakota threw a cryptic trick trap his way. New paragraph. Yes, I did. I read the daily briefs sent to my home mug safe room. I was quite intrigued to hear the Alterans change their name to reflect you becoming a part of their lives, Riker said with his debonair sly grin. Prince Dakota had no doubt Riker would have no problem catching girls in his teenage and young adult years. New paragraph. Yeah, apparently, when I cured the plague and healed them all, it caused a major change in their bodies at the subatomic level. I thought it was a cellular level, but Daryl did more research and found it was deeper. Prince Dakota said with a stupefied look as he shook his head in amazement. Riker was fascinated at Dakota's superpowers and his ability to affect an entire civilization to the point they became more spiritual, and in tune with the universe and less arrogant. And major biochemical and DNA changes had to have occurred to cause changes in their advanced brains. Riker thought the Vulcans were the smartest spacefaring race he'd ever heard of until he met the Epsilonians. New paragraph. Indeed, Dakota is usually right concerning these kinds of discussions, Riker said with a half grin, already knowing how Prince Dakota would respond. Indeed he is, but be careful saying usually around him when it comes to his smarts, or he'll give you the stink eye with that weird wry smirk of his. According to him, he's always right. And the funny thing is, ever since I've known him, he has always been right. And he won't tell me his IQ no matter how nicely I ask. Now, I know I keep secrets from people, but he knows everything about me. So, I can't understand what his motives are for keeping his IQ under wraps. New paragraph. Is that the only thing about him you don't know about? It is. Knowing him, he's probably feeding me clues about it that I'm just not seeing. But I've been so focused on leading a league, I've probably just missed them. Well, he does like cloak and dagger games. He was a formidable opponent when we chased after you in France and Alaska in the last search mission, Riker said with a chuckle as he shook his head in amazement at Daryl's games. New paragraph. Well, the next search mission is going to be interesting. I still don't have a clue which mug will be snatched and hidden. Daryl is going to be the snatcher, and it's going to start next Monday. But this time, I won't be running from all of you. I'll be helping this time. And Daryl will be laying traps to trip us up. So we'll need to stay on our toes, because any mug who gets trapped 3 times will be out for the remainder of the search. Prince Dakota warned as he lightly shook his head to get a tuft of his wavy blonde hair away from his eyes. He'd been born with the usual tight curly hair most African Americans had. But after the lightning strike, his hair rapidly changed to straight and wavy like a Caucasian. It was mostly blonde, with black and red strands lightly streaking throughout. Why his hair changed baffled scientists, and it made no sense whatsoever. New paragraph. The fact that his supernatural powers caused his anatomy to change to male-female was less baffling than the hair thing. He had been born a boy, but a while after he developed the ability to fly without wings, his body miraculously changed one night in bed to a hermaphrodite. He now had fully functional male and female genitalia, but with all the power he wielded, no one dared say a word to him about it, especially bullies, who knew better than to mess with a superhuman. A few tried, but had their asses handed to them quickly and efficiently. And no one ever called him a hermaphrodite, which he considered an insult. He preferred male-female hybrid, which was kinder and sounded better. Calling him a hermaphrodite or hermath for short to his face was fighting words. But one big difference was that he didn't have 2 mammary glands. He had 8 smaller ones, with the 2 closest to his navel being non-functional, and the 6 higher ones were functional. They were about the size of cherries and puffed up a bit bigger when he was in heat. The first day in gym class in the showers after his body changed had been interesting, but that was a story for another day. I'm going to take another short break, then I'll continue with the second half of chapter 1. Welcome back. New paragraph. Yeah, I've warned the mugs to stay alert for traps, but at least the assistant quartermaster will be leaving power-ups to counteract Daryl's traps, Riker said as both their communication systems began chiming rapidly. The chime was an emergency tone that indicated an immediate mission, but it also indicated it wasn't one assigned to them by the UA beings. It was one from somewhere else. The UA beings always assigned the missions well in advance and when they needed to report to any one location. Emergency missions usually came from modern governments, where mugs were citizens. In case of a sudden planetary emergency or disaster, or if covert or powerful assistance was needed, a distress beacon was left with the government the mug was loyal to. They could do things no normal military could ever hope to do. They both consulted their systems to see what was going on. New paragraph. All mugs had a rectangular smartwatch communication system that could display holographic images. The watch was part of their battlesuit system, which was powered by their energy batons. The batons were powerful and used advanced matter energy technology to create anything a mug needed, such as a space battlesuit or SBS, for flight through interstellar space. The SBS used hyper-advanced faster-than-light technology to propel any mug to a destination. Each mug was issued an energy baton upon induction into the organization. The batons were where they got their superpower, and each soldier started out with 100 watts of power. They had to train regularly to advance to kilo stage before they'd be allowed on any missions, and then under supervision. Only after they reached mega stage would they be allowed on missions without a higher ranking mug as a training supervisor. The batons were made from a collection of exotic materials which could be charged with great amounts of power, which was made possible by the UA beings and the mug's access to all advanced tech in every universe. The batons were assigned to each soldier, and they could not be stolen or accidentally dropped. It remained attached to each prospective person and never left a soldier's side. The batons could miniaturize down to the size of an ink pen and covertly be attached to a necklace. The batons grew longer and more ornate as the mug progressed through the ranks. Each baton started out plain looking at 12 inches long. The batons maxed out at 6 feet long. New paragraph. There were 9 stages, and they were as follows: Watt stage, Kilo, Mega, Giga, Tera, Peta, Exa, Zeta, and Yada. Another stage had been recently added by the UA beings since the mugs had achieved a milestone of a certain number of soldiers. Beta stage was added with Alpha and Omega to be added at a later date. Each stage denoted the amount of power a mug could control. Watt stage started out with 100 watts and topped out at 999 watts. A mug then graduated to the next stage, which was 100 kilowatts of power. So, a mug at Watt stage had the rank of Mug Ensign C1W. C was Roman numeral for 100, so C2W was 200 watts. C2.5W was 250 watts, and each stage followed the same protocol. 100 kilowatts was C1K, Omega was C1M, Giga was C1G, Tera was C1T, Peta C1P, Exa C1E, Zeta C1Z, and Yada C1Y. Beta stage was C1B, but no one, not even Prince Dakota, had achieved beta stage yet. Mugs were promoted according to their training and successful missions, and Dakota and his ranking soldiers could give limited promotions, but only the UA beings were allowed to promote Dakota since he was the leader. This says the beacon going off is from the Quad universe, and it's urgent. Apparently, someone important disappeared while on vacation in Europe, and there's no sign of them. The President and the Joint Chiefs are at a loss. Come on, let's head back to Mug headquarters, and we'll go from there, Prince Dakota said as he waved Riker to follow him. Riker simply nodded and followed his team boss as they left the Royal Palace. Scene change. I'll take another short break and then continue with the second half of Chapter 1. Welcome back. New scene. Prince Dakota and Riker walked into the Mug Command Center where Bryce Crenshaw, Dakota's second in command, was waiting on them, along with a few other soldiers. Bryce was 15 years old, Caucasian, and from the year 2015 in his universe. He had a wry smirk on his face, so Dakota and Riker knew whatever he'd learned in the time since they began heading there would be interesting. New paragraph. Bryce, do I even want to know what you're about to tell me? Prince Dakota asked as he walked up to him with narrowed eyes. Riker struggled to remain composed and not bust into hysterics at hearing the agitated tone in Dakota's voice. He could be quite comical when he was agitated, and they were all certain he'd blow a lid at the next information he was about to be told. New paragraph. No, you don't, but you need to be informed. But since the beacon going off is from the Quad universe, Dickie wanted to tell you, Bryce said as he glanced at Dickie. The floor is yours, Dickie, he added as he gestured lightly with a hand. Dickie was 12, just about to turn 13, and was part of quadruplets. He had 3 siblings, Nicholas, Ricardo, and Deanna, but they preferred to be called Nicky, Ricky, and Dee. Dickie's full first name was Richard, and he hated it. They, too, had counterparts in other universes that were as goofy as them. And Dickie, who was a boy, was pregnant, but that was a weird story for another time. But for now, more urgent matters were in play. New paragraph. Thank you, sir. Dicky said as he turned to address his leader. Your Majesty, it appears the missing people were kidnapped by vampires. He said nonchalantly, as though real vampires kidnap people on a regular basis. Prince Dakota did a double take and shook his head as if to clear it. His mouth was agape, and he just looked at Riker with astonishment. Riker just shook his head and grinned at Dicky's buffoonish briefing. In all his time traveling, universe hopping, and leading the mugs, Dakota had never gone up against vampires, and he didn't think they actually existed. He dealt with zombies, which was another story entirely. A few other mugs were stifling giggles at the stupefied look on Dakota's face. New paragraph. Dicky say what now? Prince Dakota asked as he just looked at Dicky. They're apparently an alien race living on Earth that likes to drink blood. Ricky has all the techie details, Dicky said as he patted Ricky's shoulder. Dicky was only 4 months pregnant, but since he was a superpowered mug, his fetuses had grown fast, and he was the equivalent of 8 months. He'd be full term soon, but since the mugs had access to advanced holographic technology, Dicky would be allowed to go on virtual missions. Pregnant mugs were not allowed to do actual physical battle, but a holographic device could be taken on missions, and Dicky would be able to attend via the holo room. His image could be transmitted to other universes and long intergalactic distances to allow him to be in battles, and he and his fetuses would be protected from harm. When he was seen via the portable holographic device, his pregnant belly could be hidden from view since he wouldn't actually be present. Everyone had their eyes on Dicky's quad brother, Ricky. New paragraph. I had a feeling we'd eventually have to deal with him. What do you have for me, Ricky? Prince Dakota asked as he stood calmly with his hands folded together in front of his body. Dicky narrowed his eyes slightly as Ricky mentioned his name in a brief comment. Your Majesty, the vampires, as Dicky so eloquently put it, are actually an alien race from a star system in another galaxy. Their home star gradually transformed into a giant, and their planet became uninhabitable. They came to Earth about 7,000 years ago. They've managed to stay hidden from humans by only coming out at night and staying in the shadows. They can come out during the day, but must stay out of sunlight and remain indoors or extreme shade. Their skin is hypersensitive to yellow dwarf sunlight. They're not immortal, contrary to Hollywood movies, but they are long-lived. Their lifespan is 300 plus years, as long as they're well-fed, Ricky explained. He paused to let that info sink in. Okay, so we'll need to find them a new planet to live on, because continuing to kill humans is out of the question. I take it they resemble humans and can blend in. New paragraph. They can, but their skin is very pale. They use makeup to help blend in. Their planet was unique, and they'd evolved to eat arsenic-rich and highly acidic foods, which will be poisonous to humans. But our food is poisonous to them. Hemoglobin is the one thing they can digest. Most of their race are peaceful and simply buy pig or other animal blood to consume. But some of them delight in hunting humans, Ricky said with a hint of irritation at knowing there were those that enjoyed killing innocent people. Do I even want to know what this race of vampires is called? Prince Dakota said as he once again glanced at a smirking Bryce and a grinning Riker. Sure you do. They're called Oxians, Dakotans, Ricky said as he struggled not to giggle in front of his boss at such a wacky name for a species. But according to the Cinequantum computer, or AQC, that is what they were called. Prince Dakota just looked at Bryce silently for a moment with a wry smirk and then gave his orders. New paragraph. Okay, let's get started. Bryce, contact the SGC and let them know we're on our way. Bryce, select some mugs for this mission, and then we'll have a quick briefing on how to proceed. Ricky, what else can you tell us about the OU race? OU? Ricky asked, with a hint of a smirk on his face, already knowing why those letters were used. But he just wanted to hear his boss say why. I'm not even going to try and pronounce their name. OU will do just fine. Of course, sir. Well, the OU are extremely strong, and they can climb tall trees effortlessly, jump high, and they are fast and agile, which is why so many humans are defeated by them. Well, I bet they're not as fast as us. I can't wait to meet them, Prince Dakota said with a wry grin, as though he was eager to use his superpowers to show some strong vampires who was boss. Bryce simply chuckled and shook his head at the devious look on Dakota's face. This next mission was going to be a bit wacky and interesting. Riker couldn't wait to get this mission started. That is the end of Chapter 1. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. The next upload will be Chapter 2, Moles, Light Bulbs, Carrots, and Great Danes. The subtitle is Earth Orbit in Another Universe, designation UVS 008-923, AD 2017. The next upload may be a while because I have to go to work. I'll be gone for a few days, and then I'll be back at it. Thank you, and have a good day.